and also on our YouTube channel, which is the City of Dallas City Hall. And then at the conclusion of this press conference roundtable, both the English and Spanish version, the simulcast, will be available on our YouTube channels. And so I think that'll be beneficial for anyone who needs to go back and find comments or for your newscast for later today. But I first want to just start by thanking everyone for their participation. We're excited to announce our new Chief of Police, Eddie Garcia. I also want you to know that we have the City Manager online as well, Mr. T.C. Broadnax, and our Assistant City Manager, John Fortune, in charge of Public Safety. And so without further ado, I've introduced all of the parties in terms of who our city participants are. What I'd like is for TC to take the helm, and I believe he wants to introduce the chief himself. And then the chief will say a few words. And after that, we will start the line of questioning. I have to tell you, because there's so many reporters, we can only go one round. So I certainly hope you've chosen your question of choice. Again, I will actually tell you the order too, and I did it based upon how quickly everyone responded or RSVP'd. So I'll say, for a hypothetical, it might be Tanya Iser or Lori Brown, and then Ken Holtoff. And then after that, I'll give the names of the next reporters who can go with their questions. So just a little housekeeping rules, but this isn't our first rodeo. But we are excited, though, to announce our new Chief of Police. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our City Manager, T.C. Broadnax, to say a few words.
Thank you, Janella. Can you hear me?
Sir, loud and clear.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Dallas City Manager T.C. Broadnax, and it's an honor and a pleasure to introduce the successful finalists who will serve with the 30th police chief in the nation's 9th largest city, Eddie Garcia. Chief Garcia will relocate to Texas from San Jose, California, where he's been chief since 2016. During Chief Garcia's career with San Jose PD, which started in 1992, he has worked in the patrol, narcotics, and special operations, mobile emergency response group, and equipment units, was a patrol sergeant, night detective, and homicide investigator, and commanded the community services division and special investigation units. While leading San Jose's police department, Chief Garcia led initiatives to help build community trust, increase transparency, and embrace fair, impartial, and constitutional policing. Among San Jose's successes during his tenure, they implemented basic Spanish in the police academy, launched the Spanish language Facebook page, and significantly increased minority recruiting. Chief Garcia is the first Latino to be Dallas's top law enforcement officer and is bilingual in English and in Spanish. He has his bachelor's degree from Union Institute and University. Finally, and most sincerely, I again want to thank all the women and men of the Dallas Police Department. Not only have you faced challenges this year like our city has never seen before, your courage and bravery have laid the foundation for Chief Garcia's success through real change, 21st century policing that is responsible, equitable, accountable, and legitimate. I'd also like to thank all of the other candidates, especially those from within the department, for their continued support and dedication to our community and the residents of Dallas. And now please join me in giving a warm Dallas welcome to Chief Garcia. Chief.
Thank you, City Manager. City Manager. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Really excited to be here. I can't thank you all in the city of Dallas for the opportunity. That's very special to me. I cannot wait to meet the men and women of the DPD. We're going to do this in a teamwork effort. Can't wait to meet our community, my new community. When we come into Dallas, I know the expectations are high, and I know the men and women of the DPD are going to answer the call. We are going to work together to reduce violent crime in our city. We're going to do our best to do that collaboratively with our community. We're going to take a look. We're going to take a deep breath. We're going to take a look at how far we have come as a department as it pertains to initiatives and reforms. And we're going to see collectively where our blind spots are and where we need to move forward. Ultimately, I can't wait for this opportunity to begin. I'm very anxious. There's a lot going on in this next month before I'm able to take over. I cannot wait to be in the Dallas Police uniform when I first meet the men and women of this department. And again, I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Janella, we'll turn it over to you.
You're muted, Janella.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. We're going to start with Ms. Cynthia Cano of Univision, and then Stephanie Smith of NBC Universal. Then it'll be Tanya Iser of WFAA and Jeff Glob of ABC7. And then I'll come back after those reporters have asked their questions and have been answered and let you know the order for the next couple of reporters. So Cynthia, if you'd like to start with your question.
Sí, Jefe García, buenas tardes, Cintia Cano de Univisión. ¿Qué cambio o cambios llegan específicamente el 3 de febrero con su llegada para combatir esta ola de crímenes y homicidios que hemos visto los últimos, el número más alto en los últimos 16 años? ¿Qué cambia específicamente y cómo vamos a combatir este problema?
La primera cosa que tenemos que hacer, la primera cosa que yo tengo que hacer es hablar con los oficiales que trabajan con nosotros, y hablar con la gente que va a estar trabajando conmigo y con la comunidad. Tenemos que ver dónde está pasando estos problemas, específicamente en qué parte de la ciudad, porque vamos a tener que tener más oficiales en esas áreas. Tenemos que ver dónde por el departamento podemos agarrar más oficiales para estar en la calle, para que estén en la calle, para que nuestras comunidades puedan ver los policías y que ellos siguen quedando con la paz en la ciudad de Dallas. Voy a hacer mucho trabajo durante este mes, antes que llegue, hablando con gente, a ver qué diferencia podemos hacer el día que llego. Yo sé que tengo que hacer algo, tenemos que hacer algo, no podemos esperar y vamos a hacer las cosas rápido, pero tenemos que hacer las cosas pensando lo que es mejor para el departamento y para la comunidad también.
Chief, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you, for those who may not speak Spanish, let us know what the question was and your answer, sir?
The question was, what things differently am I going to do when I get there on the 3rd to help reduce the violent crime in the city of Dallas and crime rates that have been high for several years was the gist of the question. Basically what I said, I'm going to get together with my team. We're going to see we're going to be data driven. We're going to see where the information leads us. We're going to do our best to ensure that the men and women of the DPD are in the correct areas answering the call. We're going to look throughout the department as to where we can ensure that we have as many officers conducting visibility on our streets to ensure that the peace is kept. We're going to, I know that there's high expectations. I know that we have to work quickly, but we have to work smartly as well. And throughout this next month, I will be talking with my team to ensure that we have the right things in place, looking at ideas, talking to criminologists. And my job started last week. So that's what we're doing.
Thank you, sir. I don't see Stephanie Smith of NBC Universal on the line or on the call. So we'll go to the next reporter, which is Tanya Iser of WFAA. Tanya?
Hi, Chief. Thank you for taking the time to do this with us. I want to drill down more specifically to violent crime. In your city, the number of murders was 30 some odd last year. So Dallas has, is going to be well over 240 this year. I want to talk to us specifically about how you're going to tackle the problem of violence in the city of Dallas.
First and foremost, what I'll say is it's imperative to get the buy-in from rank and file to ensure that I have the right team around me that is able to convey the message. Then, there's tried and true methods that have worked, working closely with criminologists. We've talked about being specific and being data driven and ensuring the right officers are in the right places where we're seeing violent crime exist. We need to ensure that the right dosage is there. How many officers are there? How often do they need to be in these specific areas? And those types that are otherwise known as hotspot policing, not to be confused with saturation patrols, being data driven and being specific with our communities where crime is occurring is imperative. The next step, to be honest, is to go out and see where these criminal enterprises are meeting. Criminal enterprises meet in specific places, and we need to disrupt those, particularly as it pertains to drug houses, weapons, gangs, and things of that nature. Lastly, we have to take a much more holistic approach as a city and as a community in bringing in programs that are specific to these problem areas and having focused deterrence. And what focused deterrence is bringing in individuals that have not yet, that are gang involved, that have not yet graduated to violent crime, and bring them in with the community to explain how violence is affecting the community, to team up with our federal partners, our DA, probation, parole, to ensure that violent crime is not going to be tolerated. But then on the other hand of that is then we need to give them hope. We need to work together. We need to bring jobs. We need to bring education, healthcare, substance abuse programs, mental illness programs, to give people a chance and an opportunity to choose the right pathway. Lastly, I will tell you there's amazing minds in the DPD. Obviously, throughout this process, I heard a lot of great ideas from individuals that I will be working with, that will be part of the team, that we will listen to. And nothing is more important than getting the buy-in of the men and women of the Dallas Police Department. And that's one of the first steps that we will do. So sorry for the long answer, but it's we will definitely have our hands full. We'll be rolling up our sleeves and we'll be working hard.
Next, we will hear from Ken Kaltoff of NBC, and after Ken, we will hear from Chris Sapron from The Other Side Dallas, then Fred Welsh of AOL.com, and then Sabra Ayers of Spectrum News. Ken?
Thank you so much, Chief. Pleased to speak with you. Wanted to ask you about the competitors who did not get the job, the internal candidates. There was a debate among a lot of people about whether it might have been better to have had an insider who knows the city better. And I'm wondering if you would reach out to those folks to recruit their support. That might be another way to get that buy-in. Perhaps you're aware that one of those competitors, Malika Aziz, was a competitor the last time around for chief and got demoted by the outgoing chief. And so I'm wondering what approach you might take to those other folks. And repito, por favor, en español, para Telemundo y Canal 5 es lo mismo. After you do English for us, thank you so much.
Okay, so, the first thing that I'm going to do is, I'm going to have a conversation with the command staff. And it's particularly those, not only those that were in the testing process, but others as well. And one of the first things that I'm going to do is, my understanding is that there's no executive assistant at this point. The first thing that I'm going to do is to choose through a process an executive assistant from inside the police department that can assist me in bringing the team together. I'm going to listen to their ideas and I'm going to tell them, and I said this during the process, one of my goals is to develop the next chief of the Dallas Police Department from within the ranks. And I would hope that could send a message that our collective success is for the benefit of us all, for the benefit of the residents of Dallas, and for the career development and advancement of the command. So I'm hopeful that is a way that we will get buy-in from the upper command. Lo que voy a hacer, voy a selectar un asistente para mí que trabaja en el departamento, que me pueda decir cuál gente van a estar fuerte para estar en el equipo con nosotros. Voy a hablar con ellos, les voy a explicar que una de las cosas que yo quiero hacer aquí del jefe de policía es asegurar a ellos y la comunidad que algo que quiero hacer es que el próximo jefe de policía de Dallas venga del Departamento de Policía de Dallas. Y eso es algo que yo creo que si ellos oyen, sepan que estamos aquí para el éxito de todos nosotros y para que ellos puedan también levantarse a ellos para que puedan hacer y que tenga las cosas que se necesita para ser un jefe de policía de Dallas.
Okay, Chris Sopran.
Hi, good afternoon, Chief Garcia. First, congratulations on your selection. Your appointment has been met with a great deal of enthusiasm by the academic criminologist community for your past ability to connect with diverse communities and find data-driven solutions. With that in mind, Dallas, like a number of other cities, is facing multiple economic challenges due to COVID and the economy in general, but particularly the nighttime service industry, restaurants, pubs, etc. Do you have any experience, or would you be open to a relationship-based policing model similar to Proactive Alliance being considered by groups such as 24-Hour Dallas that focuses on both compliance and safety and not just enforcement?
Well, I'll tell you this. I think we're open to any ideas that we can that we can have, not only to ensure that the residents of Dallas and its visitors are safe, but that our businesses thrive. Obviously, COVID is not specific to Dallas. It's happened here. And one of the things as a police department, what we need to do is we need to ensure that our businesses are successful. It's interesting. I've been contacted many times in the last few months by, the chamber and other individuals that have asked what they could do for us. And the question is actually, what can we do for them at this point? So I would be open to things to make our businesses successful, so long as it doesn't affect the safety of the community or the officers that are sacrificing every day. So yeah, I would be open to listening to those type of things.
Thank you. Next is Fred Welsh.
Welcome to Dallas, Chief.
Thank you.
One of the major questions, community involvement. Northeast Division has been really great in terms of what they've set up with community involvement in getting the officers involved with everybody and putting together programs. I noticed that you are very thoughtful about community involvement. Is that something that you could take a look at Northeast and then see if you could keep that kind of program going throughout all of the other divisions?
The simple answer is absolutely. Every member of our community should have the interaction with our officers. That's not to say that we can't recognize and realize that there are areas of Dallas and of our community that are vulnerable right now, that are suffering from issues of crime, where we're going to need to impact and where we may need to have more presence in certain areas. But that doesn't mean that other areas of Dallas aren't going to see our police officers, our men and women. It's important. And so we will strive to do that. I mean, community involvement's been big here, but I will tell you, it'll be big there. And there's nothing greater to me. Oftentimes, the same officers that are out in the community, that are reading to kids, that are taking kids on camping trips, are the same officers that are taking guns off the street and felons off our streets in San Jose. And when those same officers, and as I've said before, keeping our streets safe and taking the criminal element off the street and having trust built in our communities are not mutually exclusive terms. And so community engagement throughout the entire city of Dallas is something that we're going to strive for.
Thank you.
Sabra Ayers.
Hi, Chief. Thanks so much for doing this with us. I appreciate it. I'm wondering, this year has been sorry, I have the beach scene on my screen. Sorry about that. Race relations have been a huge issue across the country. I am wondering, going into this new position, what steps can you take to sort of help heal those wounds that so many societies in across America have, and including here in Dallas? What sort of steps will you take, looking at sort of what things have been done before? What steps will you take to heal those wounds?
Well, it's one of the things that I have to do is really take a step back and talking to the team and figure, okay, how far have we come in recent years, and where are our blind spots? Discuss those with the community, and then come up and be proactive about certain things. I always like to operate in a time of doing things proactively as opposed to being told what to do. And so I think there are things that we can do, whether it's looking at policies and procedures, being more transparent, particularly when it comes to use of force, are issues and things that we need to do. And I'll say one more thing. I mean, I said it during the process, but it's also important for us as we're reaching out to our communities that we acknowledge the fact that we've made a lot of mistakes in the history in law enforcement, particularly as we deal with our communities of color. And we need to own up to that. That does not mean that we're not going to be in those communities. That does not mean that we're not going to be taking the criminal element off the streets of certain communities. But you certainly can do that and honor the work that the men and women do and the sacrifices they make by acknowledging the fact that our badges didn't always shine so brightly, and that we want to collectively move forward. And so I think those are some tools that have worked, and I think they will continue to work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Next, we will hear from Alejandra Martinez of KERA, and then Everton Bailey of the Dallas Morning News, Steve Pickett of CBS 11, and Clayton Neville of WBAP Radio. Alejandra?
Hi there, everyone. Can you hear me? Perfect. Hi, Chief. Thank you so much for joining us today. Yeah, I kind of wanted to do a little bit more on what Sabra asked. Our outgoing chief, Chief Renee Hall, was criticized for how she and her police department handled the summer's protest. In Santa Fe, you were also, received some criticism about how those protests were handled. And there's, big mistrust within those organizations, social justice organizations, and the police department. So I'm wondering from you, how are you going to work to build those relationships and ensure that, those communities, but also communities of color, feel safe with the police department? Because what I heard from you earlier was more police out in the streets. For many, that is, they see that as not a solution.
I mean, there's a few questions that you asked her. Let me just say, I'll take the last one first and tell you that, having officers and having presence in areas that are high in violent crime are not just things that I've come up with in the nearly 30 years of law enforcement. Those are tried and true methods of criminologists and things that'll tell you. There's a way to do that, and a way to ensure that our community knows and realizes and understands that they are not being over-policed. And that's where the cooperation and the teamwork comes in with those communities. So I believe you can do both. I'll say with regards to the summer protests, I think one of the things that we need to start is by acknowledging that, I think most major police departments that had issues, to acknowledge that we weren't perfect, to acknowledge that we could have done things differently. As I like to say, we had goals, and I had the goals that I had in San Jose will be the same in Dallas. That the goals when these types of incidents occur is to ensure that our community is safe, to ensure that the protesters are safe, to ensure that my men and women that are sacrificing are safe. Those are the goals. The tactics may change, and that's what we need to tweak to ensure that less lethal tools are utilized properly, and coming up with policies and procedures to ensure that occurs. To talk about presence when it's needed most and when it is not. But ultimately, the overarching goals of keeping community, protesters, and officers safe should never change. But the tactics will tweak. And so collectively, going out and ensuring that our community knows that our goals are to reduce violent crime numbers that have not been seen in the city of Dallas for a very long time. And quite frankly, what I've heard from, as I looked in the media a few weeks ago with pastors in South Dallas coming out and saying that they want good policing, but they want policing. And so we will do that. because that's what I feel the community needs. And we need to ensure that they're safe, and we need to make sure that these numbers are going in the right direction.
Everton?
Hey, thank you very much for the opportunity to chat, and congratulations, Chief Garcia.
Thank you very much.
So I have a two-part question, and happy to repeat any part of it that you don't catch. Chief, when you announced your retirement from the San Jose PD during the summer, were you intending for that to be the end of your law enforcement career? And can you elaborate on what led to that decision? And then also the second part of that is, what was it about this opportunity in Dallas that made you decide to throw your name in the hat and take on the challenge of leading this department?
Yeah, no, those are great questions. I mean, in San Jose, one of the things I was actually going to announce my retirement in June, at the end of June, because I wanted to give our city manager 6 months to help him find the next police chief. And I did not, because of what was occurring with COVID and the fallout of the George Floyd protests. And so I didn't feel that was a time to leave. I don't think that's what leaders do. And so I decided to not announce at that time and announced a little bit later, because I ended up thinking there is no good time to do that. With me, I've had nearly 30 years here. From a retirement perspective, it was time. From not only a time perspective, financial perspective, but I'll tell you that my decision to throw my hat in the ring really, being part of Major City Chiefs Association in San Jose, there were several conversations that I would have with colleagues that they've known for years, that if this opportunity would come up, that it'd be something that I would be very interested in. With everything that's occurring in the country, particularly with American law enforcement right now, I don't think that, there's a lot of chiefs that are hanging it up and doing other things. And I said to myself, I don't think that we could all just do that, because I know a lot of us have been very progressive and have moved the needle, and we just can't all just throw our towel in. And so the opportunity in Dallas was exciting. I don't feel a bigger connection to any other major city in the country as much as I do for Dallas. I've been to the city on several occasions. I love its diversity. It reminds me of San Jose, and it's something that a challenge that I wanted to take on.
Steve Pickett of CBS.
Hi, Chief. Welcome to Dallas, or back to Dallas, as you said. For the people of this city that you'll be serving, how should those people gauge and evaluate your effectiveness as a public safety leader? What you presented as a strategy for effective policing in your priority on reducing violent crime, how is that fundamentally different than what's happening in this city and its police public safety leadership right now?
Well, I'll tell you this, Steve. What I'll say is I'm not a stay in the office kind of chief. I will be visiting every station. I will be visiting all parts of our city, and I will be out, and I'll be visible, and I'll be present, and I'll be listening to our community. I'll be listening to my men and women. What I'll say this, I will take the reduction personally. I mean, it's not just the numbers. It's a perception of crime. Both the perception and the numbers have to go in a better direction. And so this is not an exact science. I will give commanders and supervisors and our officers the ability to not just think outside the box, but act outside the box to come up with different ideas that they have collectively. If I'm the smartest individual in the room, then I've selected my team poorly, because I need great individuals around me to tell me what we need to do, not just as I learn Dallas, but in the steps that we'll implement. And so the residents of Dallas could judge me by the perceptions of crime in their city, as well as the presence of officers in their city, the community collaboration with officers in their city, and those would be some things that I would say that they could judge me by.
Next, we'll have Clayton Neville of WBAP Radio.
Chief, thanks for taking these questions. I wanted to know, the outgoing chief on numerous occasions has called in help from outside agencies like the Texas Department of Public Safety, bringing in state resources. Even within the Dallas Police Association, there's been some criticism saying the Dallas Police Department should be able to handle rise in crime and whatever they're facing on their own. What's your stance on bringing in outside resources like that? Is that something that you're opposed to? Is it something you plan on doing?
Well, thank you for the question. And again, I thank Governor Abbott for helping and being able to help Dallas in a time of need. I'm not going to second guess the decision that was made. I was not there. But what I'll tell you, what I'll do is I'd like to look internal always before looking external. And if that means that the status quo with their help is needed, that's one thing. I need officers to be visible. I need officers doing investigations, and I need officers to apprehend the criminals that are preying on this city in order to reduce crime. I will look internal. I will tell you, I will look internal to the most ability that I have before looking external. So I'll tell you when I land, and really in this next month, whether I'm there started or not, it's really evaluating that, appreciating the help. But I think they probably also would appreciate the fact that we look at how, again, we could handle this ourselves. And so it's taking a deep breath and looking where we're at before making any decisions.
Next, we're going to hear from Lori Brown of Fox 4, and then Luis Ate from Estella TV, and Stephen Monticelli from the Dallas Free Press, and Everton Bailey. Go ahead, Lori.
Okay. I wanted to find out what you think your biggest obstacle will be once you're sworn in here in Dallas. And also, what will you see as success in that area a year from now?
Well, one of the things that is going to be something that I need to work on is the communication. One of the dynamics is communicating with all 7 stations and special operations and investigations, and making sure that my message is clear. Obviously, we've always heard of the adage that the message changes the amount of people that you tell, and so I really like for the men and women, including the community, to hear from me. And that's not going to be a small task. That's going to be something that again will be hard work, and that I will have to do. And so the communication, making sure when we can come up with every great plan in the world to reduce violent crime. If it's not communicated clearly to our men and women, if it's not communicated clearly to the officer working at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday, if they don't feel that you have their back, if they don't feel that you support them, if they don't feel the internal processes in place are fair, no plan will work. And so there's looking at where we're at as a department, talking with the team to figure out where we can get better to ensure those things occur. At the same time, being fair and transparent to our community are the things that I feel that I will have a lot of work to be done in those areas to ensure that our missions and our goals come to fruition.
Next is Luis Ate. I think you're on mute.
Ready.
I tell you what, there you go.
How are you? Good?
We're good.
We're good.
Ok, mucho gusto. En español, ¿cómo está?
Muy bien, ¿cómo estás tú?
Todo bien. Tengo 2 preguntas simples. La primera es, ¿cómo se siente de compartir con la comunidad hispana y que la comunidad hispana recibió de buena manera su nombramiento como jefe de la policía y sus primeros proyectos que pretende pues implementar acá en la ciudad de Dallas, en el condado?
Pues primero estoy bien emocionado. No puedo esperar llegar, no puedo esperar hablar con mi comunidad, la comunidad entera. Sé que hay muchos hispanos y latinos que viven en Dallas. No puedo esperar a conocerlos a ellos, a poder hablar con ellos. Estoy bien emocionado para hacer todo eso. La primera cosa que tenemos que hacer junto con el equipo de los oficiales que están ahí, es mantener la paz. Tenemos que reducir la violencia que está pasando en la ciudad. Y eso es la cosa más importante que tenemos que hacer. Pero podemos hacer las dos cosas. Estar afuera con nuestra comunidad y también mantener la paz. Y eso es lo que vamos a hacer.
Muchísimas gracias, mucho gusto.
Gracias, de nada.
Chief, you care to repeat the question in English and tell us your response?
Remember now, the community, the Latino community in Dallas is happy, excited that I've been appointed their chief. What would I do with the community, particularly our Latino community there? And then second part is what's going to be the most important thing that I do when I first get there. Well, I said I'm very excited, not only to meet my entire community, particularly, but the Latino community as well, to speak to them and ensure that they know that I will work hard for them. The most important thing we have to do is reduce violence in our neighborhoods. That's the number one thing we have to do. But we certainly can do that collectively with strengthening communities as well and ensuring that the trust is there also. But there's no question. If anyone has the same question, I'll give the same answer. The number one priority is to reduce violent crime in the city of Dallas.
Thank you, sir. Next, we'll take a question from Stephen Monticelli of the Dallas Free Press and Everton Bailey after that.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Chief, for speaking with us today and answering some questions. I have one question, and it's sort of building on two things. One, which was mentioned previously, the issues with race relations that have really come to the fore in this country and the protests that occurred over the past year. And two, the stated focus on wanting to solve violent crime, which has been a major issue in Dallas. And particularly one of the ways of doing that is increasing police presence through things like hotspot policing. Now, the question is really around analysis of misdemeanor arrests and particularly arrests for things like marijuana in Dallas, which tend to affect people who disproportionately who are Black or Hispanic. I previously was temporarily a resident of California, such as yourself, and I grew up here in Dallas. And things are a bit different there, for obvious reasons with regard to legalization. But the question really is around what is your stance, if the priority is around violent crime with regard to, the enforcement of petty, low-level misdemeanor arrests and citations, such as, and specifically, marijuana, which disproportionately affect Black and Hispanic individuals in our community. Will that continue to be a priority in light of the fact that our DA will no longer take first-time offense cases?
Great question. And I'll tell you this, the priority is going to be to reduce violent crime in the city of Dallas. That's the priority. Having said that, when we talk about and talk about certain crimes being petty, the one thing that I always caution as we discuss it is that what's petty to one person may not be petty to someone else. I could tell you that in certain communities that we've had is that there could be there could be a single mother trying to put their kids to sleep one night and they can't because there's a loud party next door, a loud party outside with individuals that happen to be smoking marijuana. And so I wouldn't characterize that as a petty crime to that mother that's trying to put her kids to sleep. Our officers need to help solve that problem. And so we'll work on having good judgment. But again, we need to also not be short-sighted that what may be minor to one person isn't minor to someone else when it's actually occurring and affecting their daily life. And our officers need to have support for that. But again, as I made mention, it'll be clear our priority will be violent crime. And I'm hopeful that is a message where we talk with our commanders and supervisors and officers to be judicious and to understand what the goals are of the department without simply blanketing something with a never or an always.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We have Vernon Bryant, also a part of this call. He's representing the Dallas Morning News. Vernon?
Yes, I was just here taking pictures, believe it or not. So if you could go to Everton, that'd be great.
Okay. Everton.
Well, while I do have another question, I don't want to jump to the head of the line since I did ask a question already. So if we're doing a second round, I'll wait my turn.
Okay.
So
Thank
be
you.
fair to everyone else.
Thank you. Hold that thought. I see that we do have one other person on this call that I was not identified. It's Drew Smith. Drew, you want to tell us what media outlet you're with? Okay.
City staff.
Okay, city staff. Thank you. And having said that, we really don't, because of the time constraint, we won't have another round of questioning, but I can tell you that, again, visit our YouTube channel to actually get the recording of this, the simulcast in Spanish and in English. And so, again, I just want to thank Chief and all of the participants. This has been a wonderful experience. It's a good way to get to know our Commander-in-Chief. And so I want to thank the city manager as well as the assistant city manager for assisting in this endeavor to make this happen. So with that being said, we are going to end this particular press conference / roundtable. But thank you all so much. And I want to say just happy holidays to you and just continue to stay safe during this COVID-19 pandemic. So without further ado, we're going to end this call. So take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So that we can reseal the 3 plates together. So I'm going to cut pieces that are the length of the Orotone plate on each side, and I'm going to be folding them over so they overlap and cover the corners adequately. So the final phase of treatment is complete. We have the second layer of sealing tape on. The Orotone is ready to go back into its frame and up on the ball.
Hello, Dallas. I'm Carolyn King Arnold, District 4 Council Representative.